Great. Where did we get to? I can't remember. I was chatting away, yakking away.
Yeah, well, I just asked you the question, if you could go back to any point in time, what would you go back to, man? What would be the one point you think, oh, I'd love to have been there again, back in time?
Well, I wouldn't mind going back to that kind of early 90s period, that kind of the smashing times with a camera, because none of us really took a lot of photos. So at Smashing, there's Dave Swindell's came down, took some photos, and people didn't really go out with cameras much. The cameras, it was quite difficult getting good photos in a nightclub because of the disposable cameras weren't very good. And so I'd kind of like to go back to that period armed with a camera, our mates and everyone hanging out, because it was a really great time, and everyone really dressed up as well. And that was, as I said, that was a key point, because we were all about dressing up, which was a reaction to the kind of jeans and t-shirts, well, not even jeans, shorts and t-shirts rave scene that happened a few years before. So we were, and the grunge thing. So everyone really dressed up and made an effort. So I kind of like to go back then and wish I had a camera.
Yeah, if you could have your camera phone now, then if ever,
Yeah.
it'd be a lot
Now
different.
everyone takes pictures. It's easy. So, but
Yeah,
then no, very few people did. Yeah.
yeah, I get that. Now, moving away
Yeah.
from the bands maybe a little bit, did you have many other celebrities outside of like music and that come into your club or hang out and anything? Did you meet any like film stars
Yeah,
or anything? Or
we had a lot of the sort of YBA crowd used to come down, and then some of those art people. But then we also had Keanu Reeves coming down, and quite a few of those sort of actors. There was a lot of people that were just sort of around and about, used to come down, because, as I said before, this was pre the members clubs thing that happened. So people just used to turn up, So it was it was exciting.
yeah, yeah. I mean, would you have liked it to have gone on long? Would you have liked to have had the club longer than you did, or would you think you could have kept
No,
going?
we finished. No, we finished it after 5 years deliberately, because we thought we got to 5 years. I mean, but every week, and as I said, the scene exploded. People were coming down just to come and see the celebrities, and which wasn't what it was about really. So people were getting hassled a bit, and so it was felt for us time to finish, and I'm glad we finished when we did. And then I went off DJing, did lots of parties, lots of events, which I still do, and it was fine. And I think it's quite good to finish those things. And also at the time, I mean, it's a bit different now, because clubs seem to have a long life span. But in those days, a lot of clubs were around for a year. There was going back to like clubs like the Blitz and Taboo and Shoe and all these kind of clubs that were kind of significant and created kind of a scene. And there were scenes that came out of those clubs. They were only over open for about a year, 2 years or so. But now clubs kind of have developed into sort of brands more, and they
Yeah,
last for years, and it's a different kind of thing. But they was quite short lived. But then trends were quite short lived at that time.
yeah, yeah. I see that in the music UK music scene from like the early '90s to the end of the '90s. The musical trends changed so much throughout that time period. It's
All the time, yeah.
yeah,
And it was the same in the 80s and the 70s and the 60s, really.
yeah,
But I think that was part of, because, as I said, I might have mentioned before, but it was because there was a lot of indie labels had quite a bit of power. So they could get records into the charts and then up to the top of the charts quite often. So the charts was very vibrant and incredibly diverse. Where now, because it's so corporate, it's very slow, and you get tracks now coming out. It could have come out 10 years ago. They all sound kind of the same, really.
Yeah,
Where things you can tell things up until recently by you can tell a record from 1965 to the difference between a record from 1967, and there was a lot of progression.
yeah, yeah. Now, one of the bands that I wanted to talk about that are on your CD is on your compilation Supersonics is Shampoo. Now, did you
Oh
know
yeah,
Shampoo, the band, very much? Because they
yeah,
get a lot of debate talk on Twitter of what scene there was in, how much there was involved in that. And that, what I recall of Shampoo was it was big they had like a couple of hits and there was there, and then they suddenly disappeared and when everything got famous in Japan and was never heard of again.
yeah. That's right. Initially they were kind of discovered by Bob Stanley and Pete Wiggs and signed to and I don't know if they were signed, but they put out a couple of records on their label, which I think was called Ice Rink, from what I can remember. Anyway, they put a record or two out with them. Then they got picked up, and the one of them, Kerry, went out with Simon from Menswear, and so they were at the club the whole time. They were around all the time. I DJ'd for them. Um, in They did a party at the Hanover Grand, and they performed. And a lot of people were there, and I DJ'd for them, and they were kind of good. They were the pop end of it all, and they weren't really taken seriously, but they did actually. There's some good records, and the guy I think that produced them ended up producing Girls Aloud end of it. They weren't. They were around. They were definitely completely part of the scene, but they were like the poppier end of it.
Yeah, yeah, I think that.
Because as I said, because what I was trying to do with the compilation was to show, because I was right in the thick of it, and the club was as well, Smashing was as well. I wanted to show that it wasn't just guitar bands. There was a lot of there was electronic bands. There was kind of art schooly bands. There was guitar. There was a lot of diversity in that world, really.
Yeah,
You know,
and I get that and that's what I like about it. And
but what, but all,
you carry on, mine.
but the thing they all had in, yeah, oh yeah, so but the thing they had in common, everyone was kind of um rebelling against that kind of American grunge thing that had been so massive.
Yeah, and yeah, everyone seems to get tired of that grunge scene that came along and overtook the UK at the time, and that it was very, don't know what the
Yeah.
word was, encompassing, wasn't
Well,
it?
they didn't in America. It was, but in America, it just kind of lasted and lasted. And Britpop didn't really have the impact in America that it did here,
No, it didn't, did it? It didn't seem to.
which was a shame.
Yeah, it didn't seem to leave the UK. It seemed to maybe go to mainland Europe a little bit, but yeah, it didn't go across to America and take off or
Yeah,
anything. Oh, yeah, because we had a lot of
yeah,
other
you're right.
bands.
It went to mainland Europe. Well, the band who were really big, who weren't really part of the scene, but they were around the scene in terms of they used to come to the club sometimes, and they were about at parties, but they were bigger than any of the Britpop bands. Were Bush. So Bush were massive in America, bigger than Blur, Pulp, Oasis, any of them, but they weren't really popular here at all. Little bit, nothing much. But they were around and about, but they just couldn't move. But they were quite far more sort of straightforward rock.
Yeah, they are, aren't they? Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I do. They were big in America. I think they had that similar sound to what the Americans were listening to and liking, and that's what got them up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because the kind of American sound went from grunge into that kind of Lenny Kravitz, that
Yeah.
kind of like funky
Yeah.
rock kind of thing. Bush fitted in that, Reef fitted into it, that kind of thing, you know. And it wasn't when the Britpop thing was much more esoteric, really, and much more kind of rebellious.
Yeah. That's what it's all about. It was about rebelling in that. Now,
It was all about
you're,
rebellion. Yeah.
you're involved a lot in art nowadays, aren't you, mate? I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. What do you still? I know you still do art shows and things. Do you go to a lot of galleries and stuff?
Yeah, yeah, I do a lot of exhibitions. I put exhibitions together because, and a lot of the artists I work. I did Jarvis's exhibition. I did a photographer called Peter Ashworth that did a lot of photographs of the bands in the early '80s, like Soft Cell and Associates and Eurythmics. So and he'd never exhibited before. So I show a lot of artists and people who haven't exhibited, and and there's a crossover because of a lot of artists got involved with music. A lot of musicians came from art school, so there's a kind of a sort of melting pot of creativity around around those kind of scenes. So I try and show that with a lot of exhibitions. So I'm working on the Mark Almond exhibition for later this year, and Holly Johnson one for next year. So yeah, so I work with a lot of, and they all create their own artwork as well. You see those, but they all went to art school. Those people. So, and I find that very interesting.
Yeah. I don't get to many art galleries myself, but I do like looking online and things at uh, new art stuff that comes out and stuff, and I'm researching and stuff. So I find it interesting to look at. So yeah,
Yeah, well,
but,
London's great because, of course, there's so many galleries in London. It's great for that as well. So we're kind of lucky here for
you're still in the heart of the scene, and you don't know it, Martin.
that. There's always something going on.
Yeah. Now, when you was DJing, I know I'm chopping a bit back and forth on that, and I do apologise for that, but you must have got sent hundreds and hundreds of demos, like on tape and CD and that. What did you do with them all? Or did you
I
just
got
keep
rid
them
of a
all?
lot of records. I went down from 10,000 records to about 3,000 records. Now I've gone up to about 5,000. But I got rid of a lot of records when I moved flat years ago. So, and unfortunately, it was around the time when no one was really interested in vinyl. So I got rid of a lot of demos, and I had a lot of demos. I kept, I've kept my Oasis albums and 12s and demos and promos of those. I've kept my Pulp stuff, Stereo Lab, a bit of Blur. I've kept bits and pieces, but I should have hung on to a lot more that I got that I didn't. I got rid of it, and a lot of it's worth quite a lot of money now because vinyl. I just got sent vinyl all the time. Occasionally CDs. I still got quite a few CD singles, but it was always vinyl for me really. I always loved it, and I've got Beck, and I've got a few bits and pieces still, and I've got promos. So I've got the promo test pressing of Common People, of Disco 2000, actual test pressing acetates. And I've also got promos of Girls and Boys that Blur brought down to the club for me to play. Um, so I was the first DJ to play that I know of to play Girls and Boys out on a dance floor. I was the first person, definitely the first person to DJ Common People. And I remember you played those, and straight away people went crazy, and you just thought this is going to be a big record, because people hadn't heard it, and straight away they loved it.
Yeah,
So it was, yeah, it was very exciting getting that kind of response, because sometimes you play something, and a few people would like it. You play it the next week, a few more, play it a few, and it kind of built. But those ones, straight away, everyone went nuts.
yeah, and you're right. They are worth a lot of money now. The price in vinyl is past couple of years has just skyrocketed. People going out and buying it left, right, and centre.
I know it's crazy. It's got a lot of money, and it's well, I think they see them as kind of they are kind of collector's items of the future, really. People collected them and then stopped collecting them, and now they're collecting them again. So yeah, no, it's
Yeah,
good. And I think because everything's digital, the way people listen to things, I think people like having the sleeve and the artwork and the whole thing. They love it.
yeah. I mean, I prefer the physical thing in my hand. I've never been a big digital guy, but
Yeah,
Blur are cashing in. Blur have announced a new album and everything. They seem to be really cashing in on the vinyl boom. If you know what I mean, they're releasing the new album on 6 different vinyl variants, all on the same day.
really.
Black and five
Wow,
different color variations, just all over the internet. Yeah,
brilliant,
they're
excellent.
cashing
That's
in on that.
good. Good. You know, I think people like it. You
Yeah,
know, which is great. I've always loved it. I've always got, CDs I like, but I've not got a passion for CDs. They don't mean much to me, really. If I DJ somewhere and left a CD behind, I'll be a bit upset for 2 minutes. I left a yeah. Yeah, so and then as I said, Pulp are off on tour. They're on tour at the moment, getting amazing reviews.
yeah,
So
I've seen
that's
some.
great. I'm looking forward to seeing them. And Blur are touring as well.
Mm, yeah, seems to be lot of bands are coming out the woodwork. This year seems to be really good because Supernaturals and Dodgy and Chris Helm are all touring at the same time now as well.
Oh,
They're
really?
playing shows.
Oh,
And the Unbelievable Truth, they've got a show in September that sold out in 24 hours, all gone. Tickets sold out.
really?
So, yeah,
Excellent. Oh, that's good. Oh,
it's good.
good. No, it's good. I think it's a kind of reaction to the whole EDM dance music thing. Although it's massive still, I think people love hearing guitars and seeing singers, and they love a
Yeah,
band. And there's not many new bands emerging that have kind of got a big following. There's a few here and there, but not in the way it used to be.
no, they can't seem to get a foothold in the charts as such or get in there above everything else that's there. It's just,
But it's because the streaming is all because everything goes via Spotify and the charts are via Spotify and it's streaming. The streaming works because they try and get onto playlists, and the playlists they try and get onto are for shops and gyms and cafes and all those places. So basically, most of those places they have dance music, different forms of dance music. So if you go into any shop or gym or cafe, they've got like a sort of dance music playing where rock music isn't really background music, and it isn't you know it's so that's why it doesn't really it struggles to get a foothold.
yeah, yeah.
But I think it will. I think people love it.
I
You only
think
have to
it'll
talk
come
about
back around.
Wet Leg.
Yeah, yeah, Wet
Yeah,
Leg now, they are doing surprisingly well. They are doing well. Yeah,
and it's on indie, and it's got to number one. So I think there's a appetite for it with the public, but there's not an appetite for it with the streamers and with the three major record companies.
yeah. I mean, I'm not a
But
big
at
gym
the end of
goer,
the
so
day, they are governed by public taste. So the more the public, I need to get back. So yeah. Anyway, so that's why I think they struggle. So I think there's a lot of bands around, but it's getting that up to that level.
yeah. If you right, man, if you could pick out top 5 songs, albums, or bands, what would it be? Pick a top 5 albums, bands, or songs. What would you pick?
From any time at all, or that
Anytime you
period.
want. Anytime you want.
Period.
Yeah.
Oh, blimey. Top five albums, bands, and
Or songs. You pick one of the three. Don't matter which.
really. Oh dear. That's really difficult. Yes. Um, I don't know what would I think? I don't know. I mean, it's tricky because there's so many. You know,
Yeah,
there's so many albums I love, so many songs I love, so many bands I love. Um, I mean, the most important band for me was the Beatles, without a doubt. So, and the Beatles because when I grew up, I had an aunt, and I used to borrow her records, and I started borrowing her Beatle albums, and I was about 10, 11. So this was 1976, 77, and a little record player, and I used to play. I used to borrow Beatle albums, and I used to listen to them. Now, this was 1976, 7. The Beatles hadn't, split up 6, 7 years before. Everybody at school was listening to Shawaddy Waddy and Sweet and Mud, Susie Quattro, all that kind of stuff, Bay City Rollers. I mean, I like that, but I like the Beatles, and nobody at school liked the Beatles. Nobody. I was the only kid that liked the Beatles. So they thought I was crazy for liking the Beatles. It was something their mums and dads liked. But I liked it, and I kind of so it wasn't just the fact I liked it. I stuck to my guns, and so I've always been looking for music and finding music and listening to things that a lot of other people haven't liked. So when people like Suede and Pulp and all those people used to hang out at the club, no one was that interested in them. They were like these indie bands, and then suddenly they started becoming popular. So I play their records out, and it was just to a handful of people, you know. And it was the same when I used to DJ Burt Bacharach and all these funny things that people weren't really interested in. Then people got very interested in them. The same with the Sound Gallery album. So I've always been, I've always liked things that everybody else didn't really like, and then everyone kind of catches up, and then they get all into them. So the Beatles were the most important band for me, really. And but I couldn't really name Beatles album. It changes from week to week, really, which I love. At the moment, I'm free into Magical Mystery Tour, but it could be Revolver next week. So, but they're the ones I always massively passionate about,
Beatles. Yeah, nice.
and they still amaze me now. And also, they were very influential, very influential on the whole Britpop thing. So I used to DJ. I'm Walrus Out. I used to DJ Baby a Rich Man, and yeah, people used to go crazy.
Cool. That's good. It's nice when because it's so easy to follow what everyone else is doing. If everyone's looking right, it's so easy to just go right with everyone. It's harder to make that left turn and do what the opposite of what everyone else is doing. It's yeah.
Well, it's a thing that bonded all me and all my pals, because I was big into film soundtracks. So I'd meet people who were also into film music. And when I met Jarvis, we were into Serge Gainsbourg, and we were into Scott Walker. And no one really was at all. You couldn't get those records. They were, you had to scour the second-hand record shops. So we bonded over liking things that not many. You'd meet somebody and you'd go, "Oh, I'm a fan of Moog music," and they go, "Oh my god, I am as well." And you couldn't believe you met somebody who was into that. So that's how you all bonded, because this was all pre-internet, and this was pre, um, uh, pre reissues as well. So it was all very much, you'd hear somebody play something. So I went into a party where when Jarvis was DJing, he played this electronic track, and I went, "Oh my god, that's incredible!" It's by a guy called Pierre Henry. And then when I went to France, I managed to find a copy, and I bought it. And then I started DJing and smashed it. But that was because of Jarvis playing it. Now in someone's front room at a party. Now, now if I hear someone play something, I could go boom, 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 go online, find a copy, and buy it or download it. It's like that. But then you just have these lists of records. And I spoke to Lawrence the other day from Denham, and Lawrence has got a list that I gave, because we used to phone each other up and say, "Oh, have you listened to that? Have you found this record? Have you found that record? Or I'd recommend this." And he's got a list of records that I wrote down for him to try and find, and that was in the early 90s.
Oh, I liked Denham, and I've read stories about Lawrence. It's good that you're still friends with him.
Yeah,
I love he's making music still, and that. Yeah.
he's amazing. Yeah, no, he's great. And he came on the radio show a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago. So yeah, he's great, really good. But yeah, no, I see quite a lot of them around still. Yes, which is good. I see Louis quite a lot from Rialto. I think, did we mention them before?
Yeah, we did mention him before.
I
Yeah,
think
I
we
think
did,
he's
because
on
they were,
tour again now.
yeah, because they were a great band. Yeah, they're a great band who are a bit underrated, and they're reforming and doing some dates as well,
They are, yeah.
which is really good.
I'm hoping they might come up north
Yeah,
and I
which is
can
good.
get to one.
Yeah, you should be able to. I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
excellent.
I've got nothing else to ask you, Martin. I'm all done. I'm all out.
Well, that's well. I've done two. I've already done one. So you've got two lots now. You can chop together.
Actually, one more thing. Did any was
Yeah.
there any embarrassing moments or anything really embarrassing happening to you when you was DJing back at the club back in the day that you could think, oh, that caused a few laughs or whatever?
Embarrassing. Um, well, the only embarrassing thing that happened to me that I'd actually genuinely was embarrassed was I got asked to go and model in Milan for Catherine Hamnett, and I went over there. And the guys that I did Smashing with, I told them I was going, and then before one of the acts came on at the club, because we used to have bands like Minty and Menswear, Salad, loads of them used to play. Matthew, that hosted, said, "Oh, made an announcement. Martin's going off to model in Paris." And then they played the theme from the Clove Show and made me walk up and down in front of everybody. And it was really, really embarrassing. And I can still remember that now. And that was, 30 years ago nearly.
Yeah,
Yeah, but apart from that, no, I'm not too easily embarrassed.
that's all right. Bet you wish you still had a picture of that modeling show then.
I know. That's what I said. I wish I had a camera then.
Yeah,
No one had cameras. There's so few photos.
yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you so much for agreeing for these both times,
Excellent.
Martin. And it's been good to chat to you and meet you because like we only have a chat on Instagram. So yeah.
Right. Well, hopefully.